being on your own, you get access to problems that maybe you would not face if you were back home. You could learn a lot from it, or you could just be overwhelmed and give up. In 10th or 11th grade, I had a computer science teacher. He would give examples of how technology can be used to improve people's lives. That really gave me like a connection to how I could learn this, go and use it and apply it in a more meaningful way. I grew up in a city of about 22 million people, very industrial, very economic hub of the country. It's like the New York of Pakistan. Coming to Sioux Falls was a big shock. The first year I took Dr. Gerling's class about poop, what happens after you flush. I started the esports club on campus. I don't really play a lot of games, but that was an industry that was growing at that time. Just like building things, making things, and again, using technology to connect people. We did take a class, artificial intelligence and robotics, how to find the data, how to clean it, and feed it into this model to get an output.
Where do you see AI going?
If you're in the edge about studying abroad, if people, learn from it and take it as an opportunity to grow themselves, it's probably the best investment you can make in yourself.
Welcome back to college. My name is Zach Stevenson. I'm from Australia, and between 2016 and 2020, I studied in the US at college. Last year, in 2023, I travelled back to the US where I reconnected with my classmates who came from countries all over the world. This podcast is about their stories from this unique, once-in-a-lifetime experience and how college in the US transformed us into the people that we set out to become. My hope is that you gain perspective on how taking a huge leap of faith, such as studying in a new country, can change your life in ways that you never could have imagined. If that's what you're all about, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening. You can also watch this podcast on YouTube or Spotify if you're into that. Beautiful. Let's get into the episode. As you heard from the trailer, today's guest comes from Pakistan's industrial and economic mecca known as Karachi. His drive to help people with computer science was the thread that ran throughout this person's entire college journey. Stepping out of his comfort zone to make friends, taking challenging classes that involve the human brain, and wrestling moral dilemmas in photography class were just a few of the side quests that this person took to get their computer science and software engineering degree. This person is currently living out his adolescent dream of improving people's lives with technology by engineering tablet-like devices to help farmers. Buckle up for a very informative conversation as we go back to college with Taha. Taha Afzal, welcome back to college.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How are you, mate? It's so good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you as well. Doing well.
Yeah. Terrific. And so you're still in Sioux Falls.
I am.
Yeah, you've been in Sioux Falls when did you start at Augie?
2018.
2018.
Yeah, so almost 5 years now.
And you graduated last year in May?
In May 22.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you've been working at Raven Industries for the last year and a half.
That's right, yeah.
Well, a little bit longer than that because you did an internship there to begin with as well.
Mm-hmm.
But what sort of work are you doing there?
I work as a software engineer on one of their teams that makes a tablet-like device that goes onto tractors to give them cool new features like, autonomous driving and things like that.
Yeah. That sounds very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you finish Augie with a software engineering
degree?
It was a computer science, was it?
It was computer science and software engineering.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and a minor in data science and math.
And so that's very much the work that you've been doing.
It is, yes.
Yeah, terrific. I remember there was, for one of the classes, it must have been a business class, we did a tour at Raven. Because to me, I always heard, because it gets thrown around here quite a lot, Raven, that do an internship here. But to me, it never made sense what it actually was. But going to Raven itself, which is just up the street, they just have these massive factories and are producing all sorts of like industrial plastics to put over to cover crops and all sorts of crazy stuff. And then you've been working on the tablet and the technology to put in the tractors to help with all that sort of agriculture work.
Right. Yeah, that's right. There used to be 3 departments. So one for the industrial films, one for military systems like radars and hot air balloons or other military GPS balloons, and then the agriculture division. They actually sold off the first two divisions, and so it's only agriculture now.
Oh, is it really?
And it was acquired by an Italian company. So the purely agriculture company, at least Raven is.
Great stuff. And so you're loving it so far?
I love it. Yes, the people are great. The team is, really good to work with. The things I'm working on really teach me a lot about software engineering and best practices and just the industry standards and whatnot. So learning a lot there. As I mentioned before, I've learned there in the 2 years I've been there more than I have at 4 years at Augie. So
yeah, there you
it's
go.
been a good experience.
Very good. You can't beat the hands-on, in the boots on the ground sort of experience on the job.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, Augie also teaches you like how to learn and how to go about solving problems, and at on-job experiences, what you actually get to use those skills and deploy the tools that you've learned.
Awesome, mate. Well, I'm going to ask you, how did you end up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota from Pakistan?
Yeah, good question. I think Augustana was just one of the colleges that I just randomly applied because there was no application fee. And on the Common App, there was a couple slots I still had available to apply.
What was the Common App?
Common App is a website, I would say, that you can use just one application to apply to, I think, about 20 universities in the US.
Right, okay.
So you just have to write one college essay and, enter your details just once. So I had a few openings left on the application still, and I applied at Augustana because there was no application fee, and they ended up, giving me a good scholarship offer. Philip Mulder worked with me just over email, answered all my questions better than any other college did, and that made me feel more welcomed, or
or at least just drawn to the college. Like, hey, someone's listening to me here. Like, I'm interested in going, but someone is actually responding back.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So it turned out to be a good scholarship, and I looked into the city. It was a growing city. There's a few opportunities with computer science and software engineering. The campus is not too big, not too small. So it ended up to be just a right package in all the different areas I was looking at, because I didn't want to be in a college town that's 1 hour away from the nearest Walmart, or in a big city where it's hard to or more expensive to live. So I think Sioux Falls and Augustana just happened to be the right balance.
They're looking for a good balance. Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Where you could sort of get the not complete middle of nowhere sort of vibe, but very much growing city, and also like without it just being overly crowded and just too chaotic.
Right. I would say that when I did come to Sioux Falls for the first time, it did feel in the middle out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
Because I grew up in a city of about like 22 million people.
What city was that?
It's Karachi.
Karachi.
Yeah, and the southernmost part of Pakistan. It's a coastal city, very industrial, very economic hub of the country.
Is it really?
Yeah, so it's like the New York of Pakistan. So it's busy, like 24/7 traffic.
You said 22 million.
Yeah. So,
that's a big population. That's almost the population of Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, so coming to Sioux Falls was a big shock for me, but eventually I think it grew on me and I felt more comfortable because, I mean, this was the first time I've seen the clearest sky and, you could walk around without much traffic around you. So, yeah.
All right, so there's lots of pollution back home then.
Right.
I guess being in a big populated city on top of it being industrial capital as well.
Yep. So
Right.
just a lot of traffic, just a lot of people, a lot of hustle everywhere all the time.
So what was it like growing up in Karachi?
It was a good experience. I mean, most of it was just, you from home, you go to school, and you come back, maybe hang out with some friends over the weekend, play with your brothers out in the streets, or yeah. So it was a good experience, I would say.
What about sort of the high school system? Did you go to what you would say a good high school?
I'm very privileged in a sense that I did go to like a British Council approved. You're probably familiar with the A levels or O levels.
No, I've got no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, so it's a British system of education. So all your education is in English, and there's a curriculum that the British Council approves or um,
Like sets the standard for.
that's the standard for that you study. So that's different from like the local or the national system of Pakistan. So that's what I studied. Um,
Oh, so you had an English school that you could go to. So everything was just in English then.
right, except Urdu when they were teaching Urdu, because that's our language back home.
Oh, so you'd have classes in, how do you pronounce it? Urdu.
Urdu, yep.
Urdu.
Mhm.
So you had classes for that specific language.
Right, yeah.
And is that because since it's like an English school, that's almost like, I guess, a foreign language in the sense that, like here, for example, if you studied German, well, that's kind of, because the school is English, German is then sort of like the foreign language. Is that sort of how that kind of worked? So you'd almost study it as if everyone was presumably English speaking, but then you've got the Urdu on top of that.
No, I think it was mostly just to learn about your own language. We had, I think, Urdu literature and Urdu language.
Right, okay.
So we, studied the theory of it and all the grammar structures and whatnot, and also had more creative writing and things like that. So it was more, I think, to just continue learning a language and learn more about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so where did the computer science interest come from?
I think that would have been in 10th or 11th grade. And so we have 11th grades, and then we have 2 years of high school, and then 4 years of college or university.
Oh, so it almost goes up to the 13th grade,
right?
then, does it?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think in 10th or 11th grade, I had a computer science teacher that instead of, or in addition to just teaching us about the theory of computer science, he would also, give examples of how technology can be used to improve people's lives or, add value to their lives and make things easier. So that really gave me like a connection to how I could, learn this technology or tool to go and use it and, improve people's lives and apply it in a more meaningful way. And I think that was the best experience of learning computer science I had. And then I took it in high school, really enjoyed that, and then I ended up taking it at Augie as well.
Yeah, because that was sort of, you were set like, hey, I'm going to study computer science at the college level.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of where that drive came from.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So how did you specifically find, like, why was it that you were going to go to Augie? Because you had all these other like colleges too, but what was it apart from, I guess, the small town balance of like not being tiny?
Mm-hmm.
What were sort of the things that you were looking for in a college?
I mean, I did get some offers from a lot of like colleges in the US. I think some of them were in Illinois, some in California. Augustana was the only one in South Dakota. And I think when I look back at it, it was definitely just like a good package overall. Like, when you look at everything, it wasn't too, like, I have family in Illinois, so it wasn't too close to them that I would be relying on them too much and not growing myself personally, but also not too far away that, I wouldn't have help when I need it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that was just a good balance of everything.
Yeah. And why is it that you wanted to come to the US to study?
I actually came to the US in 2016 with my high school. We came at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Oh, right.
And we had a robotics competition or program we took part in, representing our high school. So that gave me the exposure to the US outside of watching Hollywood movies. And
of course,
it seemed nice. People were nice. We were at a more like touristy places compared to, or it's also different being a tourist versus like living somewhere. But I think that gave me a spark that this could be an option I should explore. And I worked with my college counselor, talked to my parents, and made sure I was doing all the right things, like taking the SAT and getting the grades I needed and applying on time within deadlines and things like that.
Yeah.
So that really sparked my interest, and things just kept falling in places.
Yeah, fantastic. Was it sort of a normal thing for people to go from Pakistan to study in the US? Like, did you have other peers that were doing something similar?
I think maybe one or two of my friends from high school came to the US. Some went to Canada. I think a couple went to the UK. A couple went to Germany. A couple went to Australia even. It's not a very common thing, I would say. I mean, I'm blessed to come from a middle upper class family. So it's something, like more of a privilege that people from my socioeconomic background get. It's definitely not for everyone, especially because it's not an easy, to finance an education abroad.
Yeah, okay. And to paint the picture a little bit more about Karachi.
Karachi. Yeah.
Karachi. To paint a picture a bit more about that and just sort of describe it a little bit more for me, because you've mentioned a few times that you've been fortunate enough to be in sort of the upper middle class. So is there some severe poverty there as well?
I mean, just like, in every major metropolitan city there is, like, for example, you go to New York, you would see buildings worth billions of dollars, and right in front of them there's like, a homeless population or empty hotels. And again, like homeless crisis in the city. So it's just economic disparity between people there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, lucky enough, you were fortunate enough to come to the US.
Right. I feel very lucky. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like for you when you came off the plane for the first time and you sort of got to see, hey, this is campus, this is Sioux Falls? What were your sort of first impressions?
Yeah. Like I mentioned, I have my aunt and uncle in Chicago, Illinois. So I actually flew there first about a month before Augustana started.
Makes sense.
So I stayed with them, just to get used to the US, or, get a cell phone and just spend some time with family. And then my uncle and one of my cousins actually drove me to Sioux Falls. That was like a 10-hour drive.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So I'm thankful for them. And, it was a lot of cornfields on the way here. But, when I came to Sioux Falls, we just did a quick round of the city. We went to the Falls Park, and my uncle met my first VA, just see the dining hall, my dorm, and things like that, just to make sure it's a real place, because everything up until that point was
just
online.
A few pictures and a few bits of text saying, oh, This is a great place to come to.
Right, yeah. So he, made sure I settled in properly. And then, we started the orientation, I think, soon after that.
And so what were you feeling during that time?
I think it was mostly just settling in, taking it all in, and, trying to figure out who my point of contact would be, and, just getting used to, like being in a larger crowd, because I'm more on the introvert side. So, getting used to that and making sure I was doing everything right, and, making sure I was signing up for the right classes, or, finding a on-campus part-time job and things like that was the majority, I think, of the first few weeks or first few months that I was involved in.
Yeah, it takes a bit of adjusting, getting used to it. I think there's only so much preparation you can do when you arrive here. I mean, you still just have to jump in, meet new friends, and just start all these activities through the orientation, and then also just get into classes as well.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring up that, like, being an introvert, because I'm an introvert myself. And like doing this podcasting stuff, it does wear me out by the end of it, even though I really love doing it.
Right.
But I think being here at college in the US, it is you must have an absolute field day if you're an extrovert, because there's just so many people to talk to. There's people everywhere. People are just willing to share like their stories and who they are, especially in those first few weeks of orientation in the first classes as well.
Right. Yeah, because I think everyone is looking for friends. Everyone is, starting from scratch, so to speak. So it's everyone on the same level, just, put together, and we just find our groups.
So how did you manage all the energy of all these extroverted people? A lot of them Americans, just, which is, I guess, a little bit of a stereotype, but it's true. I think that experience was everyone's super excited, and often the Americans are very outgoing, welcoming, but it is pretty overwhelming. So how did you actually cope during that time as an introvert?
I think it was just, taking things by the day, taking a break if I wanted to, or if I needed. But I think the orientation that we had with the IPO to the Black Hills was more on the less energetic side, because, there was a smaller group than, maybe 200 new freshmen or first year students. So that, I think, gave me access to, good friends, or, good conversations, instead of just meeting everyone just one by one and forgetting their names like 2 seconds after.
So you found it okay to meet friends, and that was okay for you?
I think so, yeah. And I mean, most of my friends ended up being from the same like intro to computer science classes that, some other international students also took. So, that's how just the friend
Oh, that's
circle
great. Just having that common
grows.
interest
Yeah.
as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Terrific. And how were the classes that you took here?
I actually came in because I took the British curriculum. It's almost like an AP level college classes in high school. So I came in with some credits.
Oh, right.
So I skipped the introduction to computer science class, but I ended up taking in JTerm anyways because I needed something to do.
All right.
So
So you must have found that class pretty easy then.
it was easy, but it was fun because it was, I think the professor taught Python. That's a language that I did not know as much at that time.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so
you definitely learned something from
absolutely, yeah. So learning the same concept just in a different language, I think just solidified the concepts. And it was a fun class. And I think JTerm was a good pace for it too, given that I knew most of the things just in a different language.
Yeah. So you didn't really struggle at all. It seems like you have a really strong passion for computer science. So I think that would sort of help you get through even some of the tougher classes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was a fun challenge. Like every class, there were some harder classes towards the end, like algorithms and data structures and other math related, like discrete structures, I believe. Those are a bit difficult, but we managed it all with friends and just studying and reaching out to professors and whatnot.
And so what does computer science actually involve? Because I think I took the intro class as part of my business degree.
Mm-hmm.
So that was sort of, what do? We did some coding, some sort of, what would you call it, like data management with spreadsheets and that sort of thing. So, but what else sort of builds into that computer science?
I would say, yeah, computer science is technically more on the theoretical side of things, how to come up with algorithms or processes that solve problems like quicker and faster in a more efficient way, whether it's like sorting or finding the shortest path from one city to another.
So it's very streamlining things,
right? Yeah.
So instead of doing all these inputs to get to like from A to C, well, we can do B, or like we just cut that out altogether and just go straight A to C.
Right. Yeah. So that's computer science. It's more on the theoretical side of how computers work, what are the most well-known like algorithms for searching and sorting and whatnot, and how do you come about solving problems and using data structures properly. And then that I think you can use in other software engineering skills, and use those like build applications and build websites and apply that theoretical knowledge to solve real world problems, so to speak.
Yeah,
they kind of go hand in hand.
So as soon as you've just been talking about that, I immediately just think AI and how it's just progressed so far in this last year in particular, or at least publicly, because I know behind the scenes it's been probably going on for decades. But was that something that you learned about at Augie, or is that something that you use in your work now?
We did take a class, I think it was called AI or Artificial Intelligence and Robotics at Augie. And it gave us a good understanding of how these different models work and how to go about building one, or how to find the data, how to clean it and feed it into this model to get an output, and you can use it for classifying whether something is a hot dog or not, and a cat or dog and whatnot.
Which seems easy for us humans, but a machine that has different sort of inputs, so it's not looking at the same things, and because we have our own schemas. So when we see a hot dog, well, we know kind of with all the context around it, well, that's a hot dog.
Right.
Whereas an AI has all these other different inputs, so it doesn't just recognize that immediately as a hot dog.
Right. I mean, it's all just ones and zeros at the end and inside the computer. So it has to look at, ones and zeros representation of a hot dog and see if it's similar enough to other hot dog images that I've seen in the past, and, give you a probability score of whether it's, 99% hot dog and 1% not, or however that turns out to be. So we did learn about AI, and we don't use it quite as much at work, just because of like IP or intellectual property issues. You don't want to give it, company secrets and things like that, just because I think some websites use that data to train their models more and more.
So you're not doing ChatGPT, can you write me a code for this, super specific tablet controlling a tractor sort of thing.
Yeah, not specific things like that, but I still use it, ask questions, or you would, if you have a question in a bigger project that you're working on, you could almost take out a piece of that project and simplify it, or change the names or things that it's modifying, and input that into ChatGPT to ask questions on how you would go about doing this, or it could help you come up with different designs, or list pros and cons of a certain approach that's more focused towards those applications, instead of this is my company's code base, give me some
I
more
can't be bothered
functions.
showing up and doing my work today, so can you just do it all for me?
Right.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to spill all those secrets.
Right. Mhm.
No, not at all. That's really cool. So I want to ask you then, because you seem to be right in this space, where do you see AI going?
I think it's a really exciting time. Every now and then we come up with a technological advancement that is outside of just normal science and normal technology. And I think ChatGPT broke that barrier last year. And it's amazing how just everyone, so many companies and so much just capital has just went towards AI, and it's just a hot topic these days. But it also brings more concerns about either copyright or whose data was used to train those models and how they should be compensated, things of that nature, and other ethical and technical challenges that those companies and the society has to face about replacing some people's jobs, or creating new jobs and things like that. So I think it's an exciting time, but also a good time for government or regulation or regulatory organizations to come in and have some sort of regulation or fencing around how much you could do or in what areas, and because it could be used as a weapon as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So there's a lot of considerations that I think should be taken into account as well.
I think I'm particularly concerned about it,
Mhm.
and I mean, it is pretty easy to get carried away and a little bit conspiracy theorist, where it's like, oh, all this stuff can happen, all these robots could come take over. But I very much see that, like, to use it as a weapon, I think can be super effective.
Mm-hmm.
Just with all, like, just collecting data sets and like just being able to draw conclusions from massive amounts of data as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely have to be careful, and that's where those regulations are going to really need to come in.
Yeah, and I think especially in with the social media industry and how so many younger people and even older people are on social media, people or companies or individual actors could use what they know about a certain demographic, and influence how they vote, or influence what kind of news they come across and things like that, or just spread misinformation, disinformation, which is a big issue nowadays.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think some regulation is good in the area, but you also don't want to just contain the research and the improvement in those models. So it's a balance that those smarter people have to define.
Yeah, such a crazy field.
Yeah,
I can't believe it, and especially with the whole social media thing too. I think, regardless of what you really do believe about that, but I think I don't know. I would like to say it. Maybe it's a little bit ignorant to think that that social media doesn't influence us.
mm-hmm.
I think what we consume, like, very much does shape us, and whether that's sort of what we wanted to see has sort of just keeps reappearing, or if we've just sort of steered on a tangent, or we get sort of pushed different things. But I think because we spend so much time on it as well, we have to be mindful of what we're actually consuming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually reading a book called 10 Arguments to Delete Your Social Media Accounts.
What argument number are you up to?
I think number 2. So I just started
and
it.
Have you deleted it yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
I mean, while I like to think that I'm not that influenced with social media, but I'm sure there's a something somewhere in me just unconsciously that is getting influenced and wants to spend more and more time and coming back to the app all the time. But I think it's also a good source of information. But I can also see how it can be turned into an addiction that you just have to be on it and consume all those different things like you mentioned, whether it's the opinions you already have, or it's maybe gradually swaying you towards one end or the other. So again, good challenges for people to think about and solve.
Oh yeah, definitely. So moving back to Augie a little bit, we sort of went out on a little bit of a tangent. That's all good. Did you? I think you were a part of quite a few different groups while you're here at Augie. Did you want to sort of list some of those?
Oh, yes, I was a VA, a residential assistant at Augustana. I started the esports club on campus.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Yeah, you're sort of the founder of that, were you?
Right, yeah. I mean, I don't really play a lot of games, but that was a industry that was growing at that time. And so, I thought it would be a good idea to start one and, find the people that actually play games and so they can run the
organization. I remember this because I think it was me, my brother Max, Danny, Joey, and a few others. We competed in the first ever esports tournament at Augie.
Yeah.
And Max cleaned up because he'd been playing Apex Legends like crazy the day it came out.
Right.
But it was just, I think it was really cool, and it was sort of great to bring together like a community of people who share that same passion. And now they have a whole esports competitive team as well.
Yeah, and I'm very excited and glad that Augustana has started paying attention to that and actually gave it more resources than maybe we were asking at that time.
Yeah, so if you hadn't have started that, they may not have had the team like they do today.
Right. Yeah. So it's definitely cool, and a lot of schools and colleges giving even like scholarships to esport athletes. So it's a really growing industry. So I'm glad that Augustana is doing something about it.
Yeah, but you weren't into video games much yourself.
Not at all. No.
That's kind of interesting that you decided to start the club then.
Yeah, I mean, I just like building things and making things, and again using technology to connect people and just help them find their groups. So it was one of those things.
That's so amazing. What other groups were you part of at Augie?
I was also, I think, part of the computer science club on campus, and I think that's what I can think of at the moment. I took part in the Hult Prize competition.
That's
more,
right.
Focused on the business side of things.
So that was an entrepreneurial, like it was a competition. So there was different teams that had to. Maybe you can explain it better than I. But there was a few different teams who competed, and it was a national competition, or even international. I think it might have been.
Right. Yeah, I think it's an international competition hosted by the United Nations.
Yeah.
And they want like universities or campuses to host like a local university level competition, and then a team from each university can go on and compete with other teams from other universities, solving global challenges from the United Nations list of problems to solve, like hunger, poverty, economic access, education, and things like that.
And so you were part of the team that sort of brought it to Augie, is that right?
No, someone else, Hatim and Luca brought it to Augustana before I did. I competed in the first competition, and then Hatim handed off to me to take it on from there. It.
Yeah, okay. And how'd you go that first year in the competition?
I don't think we did any good, but it was a good learning experience, just learning about the business side of things and presentation and marketing and those areas that I hadn't really explored before.
There's lots of factors that go into the whole entrepreneurial space and pitching yourself and being able to actually communicate these ideas and try and bring them to fruition as well.
Yeah.
And because I remember that second year when you were conducting it, you asked me to be a photographer for the event as well.
That's right, yeah.
I remember I thought I was such a great photographer. I was taking the photos.
I mean, you were.
Oh, these are so great. Look at these photos. But I look back at them now, I'm like, bro, you don't know what you're doing.
I mean, those turned out to be really good, and that's what we used for our marketing campaign. So
there you go. Well, thank you. I guess they were good enough then.
Yeah.
And we met, we did the photography class together.
That's right.
That was the intro class back in, we would have done that in 2019, it must have been.
I think so,
yeah. Yeah. What did you think of that class?
I enjoyed it. I mean, before taking that class, photography to me was, just taking pictures and, just having them on your phone or in a camera
just a few
somewhere.
Selfies.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really a selfie person, but more, just nature or people and things of that nature. But taking that class, I think focused more on the editing side of things too, which I was thinking about because I think photography should mostly be about the picture you take and not maybe not as much as the editing process that you go.
That's exactly the same mindset I had when I started. I was like, I'm not going to touch my photos. I'm not going to edit them. I think, well, by the end of the semester, it's pretty clear that I love just jumping on the computer and pulling the color curves and just doing crazy stuff with them.
Yeah.
But I think it's just because I had that philosophy of, oh, yeah, I just want it to be natural and document what was there. But then through that class, we discussed, well, hey, every camera is different. All the sensors are different anyway. And it's ultimately an artistic interpretation of what was there anyway. So you can change things to be able to emphasize certain areas or create some sort of different mood. So it's not actually just about taking the photo as it is. And sure, you can do that. That is a method of approaching your photography, but it's not necessarily like the answer or the way to do it.
That's right. But then where do you draw the line? Like, for example, if you take a picture of a scene and there's no birds in the sky, is it okay to add birds in the sky? Or, you know, with AI tools coming to smartphones now, you know, you can drag subjects around and make people look bigger or smaller, make them jump
and
higher.
All like the beauty filters
right.
as well.
Yeah. So where do you draw the line on that?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think, well, yeah, it starts to get a little bit different when it's sort of beauty filters and changing. I guess it really just comes down to intention, is what I think, because it's, you want to, well, yeah, if you want to make yourself look more beautiful, for example, well, like, sure, that's fine. And it's like, it's great that you're looking more like you feel more comfortable with yourself. But I think honestly, the inner work is, well, hey, you should be comfortable with yourself. And even if you take the photo and the self in the light's not good or whatever, and maybe you look a little bit fat or a little bit wrinkly or whatever the case may be, I think you just need to be okay with that.
Yeah, those are fair points. Yeah.
Yeah. So would you leave the birds in the sky then if we took a picture right now with birds flying past?
I think I would leave them in. Yeah. I think it's, maybe you can edit like the colors or just a little bit of editing to make it look as close to as you were looking at it from your eyes when you took that picture. But I wouldn't go about, adding things to it. And that's why I think like one of the themes or projects in the class was more on the creative side. And I think I struggled in that a little bit just because I didn't want to make too many changes to the pictures I've taken. Because I thought, what you capture is this what you get, and maybe you can again edit a little bit. But I had a more conservative approach on that.
Yeah, more of a documentary style approach where it's just documenting what was there that particular moment. Yeah, that's great. Were there any other liberal arts? Because like being a liberal arts college, we got to take a variety of other classes. Were there any other classes you took that sort of surprised you?
The first year I took Dr. Gerling's class about poop, and I think that was awesome.
Was that FYS class?
The FYS
yeah,
class.
I've heard good things about that one.
Yeah, it was just about what happens after you flush, and different challenges and technical things about giving people access to toilets and clean water, and how the feces can be used for to extract nutrition for plants and whatnot. So it was a really interesting window to something that I hadn't thought about before.
But something so common as well,
right? Yeah,
that we just sort of take for granted. I think once you travel around to different countries, you like, for example, when I was in Vietnam last year, their hygiene is completely different to say what we'd practice here in the United States or back home in Australia. And so I think we really take it for granted to be able to go to a clean toilet and be done with it, and all our waste is just taken care of.
Right. Yeah, so that was a really interesting class I took. I also took, I think, Economics 101, and that gave me a good idea of, or a simple idea of how the economy in general works, and supply and demand and competition and taxes.
Yeah, all very important stuff. I think, yeah, as you mentioned that, I think econ was definitely a very practical class and something that is one of those things that, hey, this is sort of how the world works.
Right.
Just being exposed to that is great as well.
Yeah. I think it gave me a good foundation of how the economy works in general. And now that, we are in more turbulent times with interest rates high and inflation and whatnot, I can learn about it more easily than maybe I would have if I didn't take that class.
Yeah. So would you say that you had a pretty comfortable time at Augie? Did you have any challenges that made your time a little bit difficult?
That's a good question. Maybe academically, not many challenges, But I did struggle in more of the liberal arts classes more than I did in the computer science side of things.
Like which ones in particular?
I think like psychology was a bit tough because you were supposed to like just memorize different parts of the brain and their function. And I'm not necessarily good with memorizing just very biological names of different parts of the brain.
Yeah.
That's something I think you can always look it up and shouldn't be tested on.
Exactly. Well, I mean, because I'm a psych major,
Right.
so I would have done that at some point, and I
Right.
have a vague idea of a few of the main parts of the brain, but I don't remember them. So it
Right.
seems a little bit silly that we had to kind of do that.
Right. So I think that was one of the harder classes. Also, I think on the English writing class I took, must be like a 200 or 300 level class. That was a bit challenging too because there was just so much to write. While I liked writing, but it just got too
But
much.
when you
at
have to
that
do a
point.
ton, yeah,
Right,
it's not
yeah.
fun.
Or when you have to do it for a class or for a grade, that wasn't as fun. So I struggled in those areas quite a bit.
So that was a writing specific class, was it?
Yes, I think it was from the Sophia writing component. So probably like a 200 level class.
Yeah. And so the Sophia is like the different categories
Mhm.
of. I would have to get the sheet of paper out again to list them out, but like well-being,
Right.
science. What else would there be?
I think there was religion, languages,
Yeah.
Natural sciences, social
And those
sciences.
are just the overall. They're the liberal arts classes, which are the general electives that you need to tick off in each of those sections. There's a
Right.
few different classes that you can choose in each of them.
Mhm.
And so you decided to choose the difficult writing one.
I think that was one of the only, because I think I took it in my junior year or early senior year, and that was just one of the classes that was offered at that time. So I was like, okay, let's just take it and get it done with.
Yeah, fair enough. So Taha, my favorite question that I'd like to ask on the podcast is what letter grade you'd give your experience at Augie.
Yeah, that's a good loaded question. I'd say overall it was definitely like an A experience, that a grade A, mainly because of the personal growth that it brought me and, the challenges, and because you learn from those things. And if I think about it now, if I was back home right now, I'd be staying with my family and everything would be just provided for. Your bed's made for you, food is cooked and served to you, your laundry's done for you. So it's a very lavish lifestyle that you live. But being on your own, you get access to problems that maybe you would not face if you were back home. So having those problems and just personal growth that you get with finding your own group of friends or getting involved into activities and such things, that really teaches you a lot about life that you wouldn't learn otherwise. So if I look at Augustana in that way, I think definitely letter grade A.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important point that you bring up is, yeah, you're going to college in the US to get a degree to study, but it's honestly just the whole experience that is underneath that is kind of what makes it so rewarding. And being independent, having to look after yourself, listing all those things that you just mentioned, I think just having that opportunity to be more independent is like such a great experience by itself.
Absolutely.
That's why I look at a lot of my friends back home who just studied at home. They were still living out of their parents' houses, and they would just commute in a couple of times a week to do their classes, and they wouldn't even really interact with their classmates because, well, you don't have to. You just sit in the lecture, get the information, go home, do the assignments. That's it. But here, we're surrounded in this whole new environment where we get to connect with other people who are in similar situations to us, similar age. So it's just a great melting pot to really just grow and develop.
I agree. And it was, being 18, 19 or around that age, well, I think it's a good time in your life to, get exposure to people from different countries, different backgrounds. Just learn about them, learn about different people. And yeah, just grow with them, honestly.
Yeah. So we mentioned at the start that you're working with Raven. Do you want to tell me how you actually got that internship in the first place?
I actually don't remember a lot, but I think I applied for one of their internships my junior year, summer of junior year.
So did you get any help with the what are they called? The
writing, the student success center.
student success. Yeah. Did you get any help through them?
Right, I think I did. They reviewed my resume, but I think what I found more valuable was getting help from people on LinkedIn, because they were actual software engineers or recruiters that listed out things that they were looking for in resumes. So I think I got more of a practical help from there, but the Student Success Center was also helpful in giving me access to those technologies, or answer my questions about, or just get another opinion or a different set of eyes on my resume.
Yeah, which even the simplest of questions can actually be quite hard to figure out, especially when it comes to finding jobs and internships.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I found the Student Success Center to be extremely helpful,
Mm-hmm.
just with general advice, or when it comes to building out your resume, because that's their job ultimately, is to connect the students with the different job opportunities around the country,
Mm-hmm.
which is phenomenal. And I think some people have had some really awesome internships here, and it seems like yours was a good one because you've stayed on since to keep working there.
Yes, I enjoyed it a lot. My first internship was more on the cloud architecture side of things, still in the agriculture department. And I interned there in the summer, and then moved on to the other team that's making field computers. That's the tab that I was talking about. And moved on to there and worked throughout fall and spring semesters. And then that transitioned into a full-time job there.
Yeah, so you've really grown and progressed quite a lot
Quite a bit,
since you've
yeah.
graduated.
Yeah, learned a lot there and still learning. There's still a lot of things to do and a lot of things to learn. So really enjoying the experience.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. And so you mentioned to me before, Taha, as we sort of met up again after this long time of being apart, but you mentioned to me, because you are still in Sioux Falls, every now and then you actually do come to some of the rendezvous, which are they still in the back alley?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so the rendezvous are just Friday afternoon. There'd be one person or maybe a group of people that would present on a country,
Mm-hmm.
and just to share what the backgrounds of that like. And I remember you did a presentation on Pakistan at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But so you still sort of involved in that community, because you still like to come back. You said not that frequently, but to me, once every 2 months is, I'd say, somewhat frequent to pop your head in.
Right. Yeah. But I would say, in fairness, I think I attended only 2 rendezvous in the past year and a half.
Yeah.
But I still, I drive by Augustana sometimes. Some of my friends are still at Augustana.
Yeah.
So I hang out with them, or when I'm doing a grocery trip to Walmart, I would pick friends up and drop them off. So yeah, it's a good time to just stay connected enough at Augustana that what's happening and whatnot, but also separated enough that you have a life outside of college once you're done.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. And it almost seems like you have become that older graduated student who looks after some of the younger ones now, just picking them up for rides, which is a big help for international students, because a lot of us didn't have cars while we were studying. So being able to get a lift somewhere, because it's public transportation in Sioux Falls is not the best.
Mm-hmm.
And in the middle of winter, it can be very difficult to sort of navigate to different places.
Right. Absolutely, just giving back what I got, when I was an international student and didn't have a car. People would give me rides, and I think it's just now my turn to do that.
Is there anything that you would change about your experience if you could go back to the start of it?
I think my first year, or even halfway or maybe almost second year too, I was more focused on the academics than, meeting new people or making memories with them. But towards, junior year, senior year, I was studying and getting good grades and whatnot and paying attention in classes. But I wasn't thinking that that was the primary focus of me being at Augustana. It's more about the people that, I was with and making memories with. So I wish I just had started that a little bit sooner. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's been a great experience so far, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a loaded time at Augie for you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that, as we've been talking, that's sort of come up that maybe you wanted to just share? Something that maybe I haven't prompted you with a question?
Not that I can think of. You're asking all the questions that I thought you'd be asking. So
awesome. Well, yeah, I should mention too, Taha has been tuning in for quite a lot of the episodes. Right. So he's kind of up to speed with the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you've been doing great. This has been a great conversation so far.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, likewise. Really enjoy listening to other people's experiences too and learning from them, and just going back to when they talked about being in the cafeteria and just sitting there for 5 hours at a time. Yeah, so it really reminds you of
So you
all
can
the
relate
things.
to that, can
Right,
you?
yeah.
Yeah. It's just the greatest thing.
Right.
Just the revolving door of conversations that come through the cafeteria.
Right.
Yeah. I'm trying to organize a lunch next week where a few of us go into the cafeteria,
Nice,
into the
yeah.
dining hall, just to, I don't know, even though the food not the greatest, we're still just going to do it for more ceremonious purposes and
Right.
just to reflect on, hey, this is where we made so many great connections as well.
Mhm. And that's a good idea.
Yeah. Well, if you're free, I'd love for you to come.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And so, Taha, I want to ask you if you could give some advice to an international student who wants to come and study in the US, whether from Pakistan or maybe some other country. Is there anything that you would tell them?
I would definitely say, like, if you're in the edge about studying abroad, you should definitely do that. I think it's probably like one of the best investments in like you would make for yourself. And again, like, through my experience, I found out that it's not only about academics or grades, even though they're important, and you have to be a good student to maintain a certain GPA and get a decent job, or start other ventures after that. But I think it's also just about the little memories, like just with friends that you make, making the right use of your resources, whether it's professors or staff or friends. um, so yeah, it's a great time for, I think, personal development. And it could go either way. You could learn a lot from it, or you could just be overwhelmed and give up. But I think if people learn from it and take it as an opportunity to grow themselves, it's probably, again, the best investment you can make in yourself.
That's a great advice and great point of actually taking ownership yourself to give to the experience and not just go along for the ride, but really like grasp it and make the most of it, whether that is getting help from professors
Right.
or going to the Student Success Center, the Writing Center to get some like help with some of your writing essays, or just being more outgoing and just meeting new people, not being afraid to say, hey, we haven't met before, but I'm Taha. How's it going?
Right. Yeah. I never did that, I think, but yeah, people should do that.
Yeah. You weren't that outgoing? We didn't seem it wasn't a problem making friends for you.
I mean, I wasn't that outgoing, but I did, do just as much as I wanted to with the same group of friends. And that was more meaningful for me than meeting a lot of people in a short time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, Taha, thank you for coming back to college with me.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's an exciting time.